Hi, Jay Fallon here for the Slippery Slope. Thanks for listening. So, today is Friday, the 12th of August 2022, and I just want to go over briefly the news highlights for the week, especially the ones from Australia. Some of the things that have been concerning people this week, the things that I think are important. Just briefly run over them. It's been an interesting week yet again. China still making the headlines here in Australia, unfortunately, still acting like a petulant child after Nancy Pelosi's visit last week when she visited Taiwan. So, for a few days of, or after a few days of playing war games and shooting missiles around as though they were throwing toys out of a cot, China started to settle down a little bit. And then 2 days ago, we had the Chinese ambassador to Australia gave a speech to the National Press Club, where he said, well, he laid it out what China expects of Australia, what they want. So he said that China wanted to go back to a relationship of mutual economic benefit. The ambassador then likened the China Australia relationship to a marriage. However, the marriage analogy that he used, it sounded more like, I'll be honest, it sounded more like an abusive marriage, an abusive relationship to me. The analogy was something like where the wife, little wifey, which would be Australia in this context, was supposed to keep her mouth shut, not say anything, not embarrass the husband. Otherwise, the husband, who is China, would get angry, and who knows what the consequences were. So, he used this analogy, and I thought, wow, that sounds more like domestic violence, but whatever, that's what China wants to do. Because at the end of the day, this is what we have to remember. At the end of the day, China looks at Australia as just a place where they can get all the goodies from. We've got the coal, the gas, iron ore, all these things that China wants. And China just wants Australia to basically take the money, take the bribes, just keep letting us pay you and ignore their behavior. That's what they really want. All the little things like human rights violations, like the Uyghurs, like Christians being jailed or killed. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just, just bury your head in the sand. Don't say anything. Don't say anything that reflects badly on China. Just make us look good. Close your eyes and keep taking the money that we provide when we buy all your things. That's what they want from us, really. A domestic violence relationship. What else has been happening in Australia? Clive Palmer. He's been ordered to pay part of Mark McGowan's legal costs. They had a bit of a stoush. I think it was, last year. There's a lot of words being spoken, printed in the media. At the end of the day, the Western Australian Premier will pay none of the billionaire's legal costs, despite the federal court finding they both defamed each other. Now, while I kind of understand, that he doesn't pay it, it just doesn't seem fair that they both defamed each other, and yet Clive Palmer has to pay the costs or part of the costs for Mark McGowan. It's just the whole thing seems weird, and it really seems like also that politicians are allowed to say whatever they want because the public purse will cover it anyway. Taxpayers in Western Australia would have covered the bill anyway, which is ridiculous. Well, they have paid for part of the court cost for Mark McGowan as well. Also in Australian news, we've every day, I think this week, we've seen news about the former New South Wales Deputy Premier, John Barilaro. What a mess, an absolute mess this is. I mean, realistically, this just shows the hypocrisy of politicians in general and how they really look after each other. And then when they get caught with their pants down, they sit there going, well, they put their hands up in the air and go, oh no, not me, not me. Or it's not my fault. So what's really happened is John Barilaro, former New South Wales Deputy Premier, fronted a state inquiry into his appointment to a plum New York trade role. With a little paycheck of $500,000 a year, just a small paycheck. So the inquiry was self-referred on 23rd of June 2022 to inquire into and report on the appointment of Mr. John Barilaro as Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner to the Americas and any other related matter. So basically, Barilaro was handed a job, which, like I said, paid him $500,000 a year, and now there are questions as to the appointment. But to the novice, it seems blatantly obvious this was a favour or a political scam to give someone a very high-paying job as a gift for services rendered during their time in New South Wales politics. It just seems very typical of politicians, to be honest. Just helping each other out, making sure they get the plum rolls, the big paying jobs, just another way of getting a payout. It just seems ridiculous. I'll go to some international news. Donald Trump made the news when his Mar-a-Lago residence was raided by the FBI. Now, this really had me scratching my head. I thought, why? Why is the FBI doing this? But when you look at American politics, it seems nothing ever seems black and white. And I don't know, especially when it comes to Donald Trump, no matter what you think of Donald Trump, it does seem like he has endured a lot. He just has to put up with it, apparently. And you've got to wonder whether this, part of me thinks, is this just an attack because the Democrats don't want him running for the presidency again in 2024? Nothing's ever black and white in that place. Anyway, so in part of a statement after this, while the raid was going on, I think Trump sent out, he said that such an assault could only take place in broken third world countries. And sadly, America has now become one of those countries, corrupt at a level not seen before. They even broke into my safe, he said. Anyway, look, I think America's going through a hard time. Got to pray for America. Hey. Other international news for this week, we had the Ukraine military had a win, kind of a win over Russia when they launched a successful attack on a Russian military base. So a series of explosions this week at the Russian military base in or on the Crimean coast carries major symbolic and strategic ramifications for both Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. And why it matters is satellite images appear to confirm that the explosions, which sent frantic Russian tourists scrambling off a nearby beach, badly damaged several Russian warplanes. The explosions will likely inject a new sense of vulnerability in Russia's use of Ukraine as its transport and logistics hub. And Ukraine has not officially claimed or denied responsibility for the explosions, but an unnamed Ukrainian official told the Washington Post the attack was carried out by special forces operating behind the Russian lines. So things are really heating up over there, and who knows when or if this war will ever end. Realistically, Russia can't pull back. Vladimir Putin can't pull back. He's got to save face. And things are getting worse, even with, we're seeing instances where it seems like the nuclear power plants over there are in danger. Anyway, they need to be really careful, but it's hard to tell what's going on over there and what's actually true, what's just propaganda. There's lots of propaganda on both sides. Before I want to go any further, the reason why I want to do this highlight this week for the news highlight is for all those tradies out there who don't get to watch the news. So hopefully you're getting what you need to know off the slippery slope. Especially a big shout out to Touch of Class Property Maintenance there in Brisbane. I know he's watching. Thanks very much for watching Touch of Class. If you need anything, call Touch of Class Property Maintenance in Brisbane, and I'm sure he'll be able to ask for Scotty. He'll be able to help you out if you need any property maintenance there in Brisbane. So yes, for all the tradies who don't get to watch, you can at least watch this and get to know the news highlights for the week. Other things that have happened or been of big news in Australia the last week, and actually I'll go back a little further. We've had a couple of very significant deaths. Judith Durham, who was the lead singer for The Seekers, she died. She was fairly old. She died on the 5th of August, and that was pretty big news. But then, only 3 days later, on the 8th of August, this headline seemed to really rock Australia Australian media, Australian entertainment industry. Olivia Newton-John died. She was 30. She was 73. She'd been battling cancer for the last 30 years. She died apparently peacefully over on her property in California. So yeah, she died, and then unfortunately, probably an even more tragic news. Probably more. I won't say more tragic than the others, but very sad news, because it appears that this gentleman actually took his own life, and that was former NRL player and coach Paul Green. Actually died yesterday on the 11th of August 2022. It appears he took his own life. I don't know, what can you say about that? It's tragic news, really tragic. And I would encourage anyone out there, if you're suffering depression, if you're really going through a hard time, seek help, talk to other people, because even people who appear to have it all on the outside, they may appear to have it all. Even they can make decisions, or feel like they've reached the end, and as we've seen, take their own lives. And but please, I'd encourage you, seek help, talk to others. I think there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. For me, being a Christian, I believe, Jesus is the answer. Jesus is always the answer. Hey, look, thanks for listening to the Slippery Slope this week. This is just a quick, like I said, a quick talk about the news events for this week that I think are very important. There's been a lot of other things happening, and if you want to listen to the podcast and see what other stories have been happening, what other things I've thought should be highlighted this week, and go to the Slippery Slope podcast over on Anchor, over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that stuff. So it's the Slippery Slope podcast with Jay Fallon. I thank you very much for listening. Have a good week, and once again, this is all my opinion, and thanks for listening to the Slippery Slope.